What if I told you that on a single day in 1571, the fate of the Mediterranean, and perhaps the future of Europe itself, hung on the clash of wood, steel, fire, and faith? What if 12,000 determined European soldiers and sailors, outnumbered 5-1 by the most feared naval empire of their age, shattered a myth that had dominated the seas for decades? This was not just another battle. It was a moment when cannon smoke covered the horizon, when decks ran red with blood, and when the unstoppable expansion of the Ottoman war machine met a wall of iron resolve. This was Lepanto, the day the tide turned. By the late 16th century, the Ottoman Empire had become the dominant naval power in the eastern Mediterranean, its fleets sweeping across the sea with terrifying efficiency. From Constantinople to North Africa, from the Aegean to the Adriatic, Ottoman galleys enforced the will of the Sultan, raided coastal towns, captured slaves, and tightened their grip on key trade routes. European powers watched anxiously as one port after another fell under Ottoman influence, and the fear was not only political but civilizational. The Mediterranean was more than water. It was the highway of commerce, culture, and survival. When the Ottomans captured Cyprus from Venice in 1570, the shockwaves were immediate. Cyprus was not just another island, it was a strategic jewel, a gateway between East and West. Its fall signaled that no Christian stronghold in the region was safe. The response came in the form of the Holy League, an uneasy coalition primarily led by Spain and Venice, blessed by the Pope and fueled by a desperate need to stop Ottoman momentum. But unity did not come easily. These states had rivalries, political tensions, and competing interests. Yet the looming Ottoman threat forced them together under a single banner. Command of the Allied fleet was given to Don John of Austria, the young half-brother of King Philip II of Spain, a charismatic and ambitious leader eager to prove himself. Facing him was Ali Pasha, the experienced Ottoman admiral commanding a vast fleet that symbolized the empire's naval supremacy. The numbers alone were intimidating. The Ottoman fleet fielded around 60,000 men, including elite janissaries stationed on their galleys, hardened by years of warfare. The Holy League assembled roughly 12,000 dedicated fighting soldiers aboard their ships, supported by thousands of sailors and oarsmen. The odds were brutal, and many believed that the Ottomans would once again sweep aside their opponents. But the Europeans had learned from past defeats. They had adapted. Their galleys were reinforced, their artillery improved, and most crucially, they introduced heavily armed galleasses, floating fortresses bristling with cannon that could unleash devastating broadsides before the enemy even closed for boarding. On October 7, 1571, in the Gulf of Patras near the Greek coast, the two fleets finally sighted one another. The sea was calm, the sky clear, almost indifferent to the violence about to erupt. As the ships formed their battle lines, tension gripped every deck. This was not a skirmish. This was a collision of empires, of faiths, of futures. When the first cannons roared, the sound echoed across the water like thunder splitting the world in two. The battle began with the European galleasses firing into the advancing Ottoman line, tearing apart ships and shattering the psychological advantage the Ottomans had long enjoyed. For the first time in decades, Ottoman crews felt the shock of being hit before they could strike. Still, they pressed forward. The center of the battle became a swirling inferno of grappling hooks, musket fire, arrows, and hand-to-hand combat. Ships locked together as soldiers leaped across decks, swords clashing in desperate fury. Don John's flagship engaged directly with Ali Pasha's vessel in a brutal struggle that would define the day. The janissaries fought with legendary discipline, forming tight defensive positions on deck, while Spanish and Italian infantry pushed forward with pikes and arquebuses. Blood soaked the wooden planks as men slipped and fell beneath the chaos. In the heat of battle, leadership mattered. Don John moved among his men, rallying them, refusing to retreat. When Ali Pasha was killed and his banner captured, the psychological blow to the Ottoman fleet was immense. Word spread rapidly across the ships, and morale began to fracture. Meanwhile, on the flanks, fierce fighting determined whether the Ottoman wings could encircle the Christian fleet. On one side, Venetian and Spanish forces held firm, absorbing repeated assaults. On the other, intense clashes threatened to break the line, but coordinated reinforcements stabilized the position. The battle lasted for hours, each moment a test of endurance and will. Cannon smoke thickened the air, turning the sea into a choking haze. The screams of the wounded mingled with the crash of splintering wood. By afternoon, the scale of the Ottoman disaster became undeniable. Dozens of their ships were sinking or captured. Thousands of their soldiers lay dead or wounded. The myth of invincibility had been shattered in a single catastrophic day. When the fighting finally subsided, the sea was littered with wreckage and bodies. The Holy League had destroyed or captured over 200 Ottoman vessels. Around 30,000 Ottoman soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured, while European losses, though severe, were far lower by comparison. The victory was decisive. For the first time in a generation, the Ottoman navy had been crushed in open battle. The psychological impact reverberated across Europe. Church bells rang in celebration. Paintings and poems immortalized the triumph. Lepanto became more than a battle. It became a symbol of resistance and survival. Yet the turning point of Lepanto was not only measured in ships destroyed or lives lost. It marked a shift in momentum. The Ottoman Empire would rebuild its fleet with remarkable speed, demonstrating its vast resources and resilience. Within a year, new ships filled its harbors. But something intangible had changed. The aura of inevitability was gone. European powers realized that Ottoman expansion could be stopped, that disciplined coordination and technological adaptation could counter numerical superiority. Lepanto restored confidence to Christian Europe at a time when fear had been the dominant emotion. It also reshaped naval warfare. The prominence of artillery at Lepanto signaled the future. Boarding actions still mattered, but cannon power was increasingly decisive. The battle stood at the crossroads between medieval galley warfare and the emerging age of heavy naval gunnery that would define later centuries. Strategically, Lepanto prevented further immediate Ottoman advances into the Western Mediterranean. While it did not end Ottoman naval power, it halted the perception of unstoppable expansion toward Italy and beyond. Politically, it strengthened Spain's influence and demonstrated the power of coordinated alliances. Culturally and psychologically, it became a rallying point for European identity, a story retold for generations as proof that unity in the face of overwhelming odds could achieve the impossible. The image of 12,000 Europeans defeating 60,000 Ottomans captured the imagination because it embodied the underdog narrative that resonates across time. It was a clash, not only of fleets, but of determination versus dominance. The Holy League's victory at Lepanto did not erase conflict from the Mediterranean, nor did it permanently cripple the Ottoman Empire, but it forced a recalibration. Expansion slowed, strategies shifted, the balance of power stabilized. In the long arc of history, Lepanto stands as a reminder that empires, no matter how formidable, are not invincible. On that October day, amid fire and fury, a coalition that many doubted could even cooperate proved capable of altering the course of history. The Mediterranean would never be the same, and neither would the legend of Ottoman supremacy. Lepanto was not merely a battle. It was the moment when fear turned into defiance, when survival turned into victory, and when the tide of empire met the unbreakable will of those who refused to surrender.